right, welcome everyone. Anthony Grosso from Zebra Technologies. I have Mike Kula again from Avalon Integration. How you doing, Mike?
How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing well. A little chilly today. It's reminding me of after Superstorm Sandy. It's pretty chilly today. A little snow flying out of the air. I got my zebra fleece on to keep warm. Zebra Avalon fleece, but I'm doing well.
Good. Good.
So this is our, for those of you joining us for the first time, this is our Avalon Zebra podcast series. For those of you that are returning again, this is our third installment. And today we're actually going to be talking about inventory management systems and what are the most important components to think about when installing an efficient inventory management system. So, Mike, I know you and Avalon have been in that business for many years and have worked with a lot of customers to help them improve their inventory management, whether it's installing a new one or making it more efficient. And actually this year, for the coming year for 2021, that's one of our bigger initiatives, again, at Zebra, is addressing that warehouse automation. And, with our changing workforce in that industry and new technologies, not just the handheld technologies, but the software that's around inventory management. All right, so Mike, based on all that, Zebra gets a lot of questions. Our Zebra reps get a lot of questions from prospective clients, looking for better ways to track their inventory and even new ways. And as a partner that's been in this space for many years, I'm just curious, and I'm sure our listeners are curious, what are the steps that you go through to really understand what a customer or a client needs to better manage their inventory management?
Yeah, that's really a good question, Anthony. And I'll parrot what you're saying. Yeah, we're getting the remnants of I forgot what the name of the hurricane is that was coming up. So it's pretty chilly.
Zeta. Oh, Zeta. Yeah.
Oh, Zeta. Yeah. So it's pretty chilly here today. So we're
any snow?
No, but I had to turn the heat on for the first time. So,
oh yeah, I can get into that later. I got a big battle going on in my house about that, but go ahead.
Sitting here working in my office, and I'm like, man, it's really cold. So, but no, that's a really good question because we get calls all the time from prospective clients, and a lot of times it starts with, oh, I need a warehouse management system, or I need to track my inventory better, and what they seem to be focused on, obviously, is what's the type of equipment I want to use, right? And generally, if you were just selling products, right, and I was just selling Zebra products, I could say, oh, it's a TC 9300, or TC 8300, MC 9300, MC 3300. But really, we're trying to sell a solution that involves your products, right? So I think the first thing that, generally I do, and it's kind of interesting. I went on a call yesterday. So, with all of this COVID stuff, we don't do a lot of on-site sales calls that often. And I had an opportunity yesterday to go out to a customer or prospective customer in central Pennsylvania. It was cold and rainy the whole way out there. And they're a 100-year-old manufacturer. They're a candy manufacturer.
Okay.
So 100-year-old company, basically running their production operation on spreadsheets and manual, right? That's what they've been doing. And now they're actually putting in a new ERP system. And the question came up of, well, how are we going to track all of this? And, with barcoding and maintaining our inventory in our operation. So, we spent, I think we were the second vendor that they have spoken to. First vendor kind of went in, did a quick walkthrough, dropped off some mobile Windows CE terminals and said, this is what you need. Go ahead and try to make that work. Right. Which,
I guess they missed our first podcast.
They did. But, what was shocking to me was, the reason we actually got called in was their experience was really bad. Right. Okay. They got this equipment and, didn't really know how to set it up. Didn't know if it was the right thing. No one really listened to, what they wanted to do. But a bunch of issues. So, we spent literally, I think I got there at 9 a.m. and I left at 12:30, right? Because we had to go to 4 different buildings. because they wanted us to go through all of their operations because it's very, very different. And I'm, from one facility to another. And, literally one of the buildings that they're at was the original house of the founder of the company, where they still manufacture product in the basement, right? So they built on his house. Wow. It was shocking, right? I was amazed that I don't even know how they got the equipment down there, piece by piece down the stairwell. So, as we walk, so I think the first thing that we really got to do, that anyone needs to do, is you really got to describe your operation, right? The hardware and the Zebra product, that'll become obvious, right? You guys have, 40 some different types of mobile computers. You have a zillion types of printers. Everyone wants to focus on that. And that's really the last thing you should be focusing on. You should really be focusing on, how do you envision that this is going to work, right? And then from that, you'll figure out what's the right form factor and things like that. So, for example, on this opportunity yesterday, they have one area where they have 3 buildings that are basically about a city block apart from each other. And they have one guy on a forklift whose sole job is to move stuff between those buildings. So, we were talking about how we're going to connect to the system, right? Because you're going to lose connection for barcode scanning. Never an issue before, right? And they're going to be looking at using your guys' ET51 tablets, because they like those ET51 tablets. And I was like, well, how about putting it on a cellular network, just that one tablet for that one user, right? Yeah. ET56, right? And that just kind of solved the situation. But, you wouldn't have gotten that answer unless you really saw what was going on and they explained to you, hey, I have one person that's been literally driving a forklift there for 30 years between these 3 buildings, right? To go through that. So, so that's really the first thing, is kind of describe your operation. Let me understand what's going on there, because from that you can get a feel of what this is going to look like in the end and how it's going to work. I think the second one that we talked to a lot of clients about is, okay, what's the system that you're going to be connecting to, right? Is it something like SAP or Oracle, or is it something like Microsoft Dynamics, or some other ERP system? Or is it something like QuickBooks, right? Or homegrown, as an example, because that really, really makes a difference. As we talked about in our earlier podcast, in terms of, are you connecting via a web browser? Are you connecting via an Android app? How's that going to work? And, the case of yesterday, as an example, right? They don't have a real solution on the handheld right now, because the vendor they're using still doesn't support Android.
Okay.
Right. So, we're looking at other solutions and testing out other solutions to get around that. I mean, they're trying to get to an Android app, but they're just not going to have it done by the time they go live.
So they're using laptops, workstations?
They actually got a Windows mobile client.
Oh, okay.
Right. And that's why they were originally looking for the Windows mobile terminal. Right. And when they, the devices that they were looking at, they're like, well, we can buy these as Windows mobile, and then we can flip them over to Android later. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't really work that way, because the Android version, as you know, is KitKat when you do that.
Yeah.
Right. I said, we're on version 10, right? That's 5 versions old.
Yeah. And you're running into a lot of extra costs. You don't really need to.
That's it. So, the real key, again, is they asked the right question, right? To the previous vendor. They said, hey, I need a Windows CE device. That's what they gave them. But no one ever asked them, well, why did you need that? And why are you using it that way? Right? Because the important part was that device isn't going to be the right one for you long term. So, once you kind of figure out that ERP system and how it's going to connect, then it comes down to, really defining, do you want an inventory management system, or are you putting in a warehouse management system? Because people often get those terms confused.
Okay.
Right. Warehouse management is, or an inventory management gives me an aggregate level inventory at a particular location. A warehouse management gives me one level below, right? I have X amount of widgets on, this shelf or on this pallet, versus, an inventory management system that says I have, 1,000 widgets in the whole facility.
Got it.
So, what's been kind of interesting is, more and more people are moving towards finite warehouse management. They want a warehouse management system because they need that level of detail. The push them on their customer and being able to deliver. An inventory management system just isn't working, right? And
they need that real-time data.
Need the real-time data, and they need to know exactly where it is, right? It's not, it's kind of like, when I was at this customer yesterday, and we were talking about how are you going to space, and they're actually putting in a warehouse management system, right? How are you going to location? They had pallets of product, and the area was maybe 20,000 square feet. And they're like, well, we're thinking about making this whole area one location, right? And I was like, oh, the bad side about that is when you stack them 3 high and 10 deep, you don't really know where that pallet is. You're going to spend a lot of time looking for it. So, we said in a warehouse system, you can literally define, this aisle is, location 1, this aisle is location 2.
Okay.
The drawback of that obviously is every time you move something from one place to another, you have to scan it, right? Whereas if it's just one big area, if I move it to the left side of the room or the right side of the room, it really doesn't matter. So, they got that, and then that plays right back into what's the right equipment, right? You got to have your right scanning optics because the person's on the fork truck and you don't want them getting off the fork truck, yada, yada, yada.
Short range, long versus long range, all that good stuff.
You got it. So then, you start to, the next thing then was, okay, how are we going to incorporate this mobile computing and barcode printing in the operation? Right. So, you got to look at their IT capabilities. There's lots of corporations, typically larger, that have IT staff at the site. Right. But, that's becoming fewer and far between where you're seeing that. Right. So then you got to discuss, okay, well, if we're going to incorporate, an MC9300 as an example, right? Are we going to lock that device down so your users can't get into it? What happens when it breaks and it goes in for repair and has to get reconfigured, right? What happens when a user's having a problem? Who do they call? You got to kind of define all of those pieces because, that post-sales and post-deployment is key, right, to making that work. Mm-hmm. And then, again, are you, does the client really control that source code of what's happening in those, in that application? Are they in a greenfield environment, or they have to, in the example yesterday, there's defined parameters, right? Our system does X, Y, and Z. So you have to redefine your process to meet those requirements.
Okay.
But generally, once we get through all of that kind of stuff, it really, really becomes obvious. So, yesterday when we started, they in their mind had, hey, we want to use desktop printers, mm-hmm. right? Because we don't think we have enough space. They wanted to use all handhelds, and they wanted to use a tablet with a wet scanner, that was Bluetooth to it. And at the end of the day, what we came up with was, well, you want to use industrial printers because you can put more labels into it and your cost per label is lower. So when you do the ROI of, the cost of buying an industrial printer versus a desktop printer, and when you run the supplies to it, they basically would pay for those printers within the first 6 months based on the volume of their labels that they're using.
Okay.
Right. So, they never looked at it that way. When you looked at the tablet computers, you guys have that ET51 now with an integrated scanner in it that the user could carry.
That's right.
And that, when they saw that, they were like, oh my God, that's exactly what we need. We don't need this 2-piece solution. Right. And then on the handhelds, they don't need that many of them, because they're going to be using those tablets. So, our next steps there then, once that happens is, get them a couple of pieces of demo gear, right? Because I was really clear, don't buy anything until, you've tested it.
You got to test it out. Yeah.
And we're working on that with them right now. We should have demo gear in there within the next week. We're working with their ERP vendor to get the workaround on the handheld and test all of it out to make sure it works. Because, at the end of the day, this ERP is going to be fed with all the data that happens on those floors, on that floor today. Today they write lots of things down, they go somewhere, they type it in, and they look at things on a spreadsheet, right? Tomorrow, when they make a pallet, they're going to scan it and it's going to update right in their ERP. So, management's going to know what's going on. And in this case, it's 7 days a week, 3-shift operation. They never shut down.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, really, really important. But so that's kind of the processes that we go through when we're talking to a client. And it's the same thing every time. Tell me, a little bit about yourself. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you envision. And we'll talk about the hardware later, right? Because once I kind of hear all of that, or, people on our team hear that information, they know, okay, I understand how you're scanning. You need an ER imager. So if I need an ER imager and I need a mobile computer, that kind of limits me to 3 options, right? And TC8300, an MC9300, and MC3300, because those are the 3 that you have with ER imagers in them. So, that definitely, I think, builds trust with the client and confidence. They know now, hey, I got someone that's coming in and understands what we want to do and kind of links the right equipment with that.
You're not coming in with a bag of tricks, just trying to sell them stuff. You're being a true solution provider.
Correct.
And understanding their needs first before you propose anything.
Correct. Because it's very confusing, and the devil's all in the details there. So, but that's basically the process that we go through, when someone says, hey, I need an inventory system. And then, obviously the next thing from that is, what's it going to cost and how do I put it in?
Yeah. You know what? I was thinking about what you were saying, and that was going to be my next question to you. But I think before we get into that, maybe we should take a commercial break and let our listeners digest that before we give them the big news, right?
So, yeah. All right. Sounds good.
All right. We'll be right back. Please enjoy this message.
Your inventory management system depends on quality consumables. That's why Zebra's certified labels are designed to thrive in whatever challenge that comes their way. Find the labeling solution tailored to fit your needs at Avalon Integration.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Anthony Grosso from Zebra Technologies. I'm here with Mike Kula from Avalon Integration. We're having a deep discussion around inventory management systems and warehouse automation. And the big question is that Mike just brought up is, what's this all going to cost us? And, really that's probably one of the bigger factors when you're going to one of these assessments. It's what's the budget? You have an idea based on your experience what it's going to cost, but you probably need to get a sense of what the budget is out there with the client and, try to explain to them the differences between CapEx and OpEx and stuff like that. So why don't you get into that a little, Mike?
Yeah. All right. So, obviously budget constraints is big, right? You're trying to put in this technology and the owner of the company or the leaders of the company want to know, if I'm spending X, what value are we getting back from that? Right. So again, it goes back to that functional process that we talked about. Generally what I do for example, with the client yesterday is, they're not ready for a formal proposal yet, right? Because they're not exactly sure, hey, I'm going to need this type of battery charger. I'm going to need this type of printer. I'm going to need X amount of supplies. They have an idea, but they really don't know, exactly what they need, right? It's kind of like, you're shopping for a car, right? You kind of walk into the dealership, you're looking at all the options and you're muddling it in your head,
right?
Of what, what do I want and what's this thing going to cost me? And then, what do I think I'm going to pay for it? Right? What's it going to cost? And what do I really want to pay for it at the end?
Yeah. It's like, I really want a sunroof, but in order to get the sunroof, I have to get the package with the heated seats and the heated steering wheel and stuff like that. Do I really need all that stuff?
Yeah. So, again, as we go through that process, right. And let's just stick with the concept of I'm putting in a warehouse management solution. When someone has defined that, they know what the cost is of that. Right. And that, depending on the type of WMS that you're putting in and the provider, we've seen WMSs that, quote unquote, I could put in for $20,000, and some people have spent, north of $500,000 to put that in. But as you're walking through that in the process, and have the funnel area. So let's take something like, we start at receiving. Okay, well, we know we're going to need a barcode label printer, right? And we know labels are going to have to go through that printer. So what type of labels are there? So we start to establish that budget, right? So a client sees not only their initial cost, but their ongoing costs.
Their operating expense associated with that, right?
Yeah. So when we talk about like a desktop printer to an industrial printer, depending on your label costs, the cost per label in industrial printer is
the volume.
It's based on the volume, right?
Yeah.
The cost for your cost per label on an industrial printer is lower than it is for a desktop, right? So if you got a lot of volume, it's kind of like the razor blade and the razor and the razor blade idea, right? The razor blades here are the labels that go through that. And, you guys have, like printhead protection as an example on a Zebra printer with Zebra Media, you can register that printer and get printhead protection. And in fact, one of the biggest complaints that the client had yesterday is they have Zebra printers and they use non-Zebra media in it. And I said, well, how's that going? And then they said, well, we're buying our media from provider XYZ. And it was, kind of a big box company. He's like, but man, those printheads are expensive when we break them. And I was like, well, if you bought Zebra Media, you wouldn't pay for the printheads. And they had no idea that even existed, right? So, that's an easy thing to fix. But as you're starting to kind of go through that and you're going through each process of receiving and then put away and then, picking and then shipping and then inventory and then quality, right? You literally build a matrix of here's the equipment that's going to be used there. Here's the equipment that can be shared, right, between shifts. And this is a budget for that equipment. So, generally I tell people, like, if you're looking for a mobile computer with an ER imager, something like I say an MC9300, right? We'll take that as the higher end. By the time you load in a battery and maintenance and, all the other stuff you're going to need, you're probably going to spend anywhere from $2,600 to $3,000.
Okay.
Right. All in. And that's with maintenance and everything else. So, that's really important because then people, the numbers quickly add up. This project I was at yesterday, that'll quickly add up to, be $100,000 project. That's what their expenses will be. Now, they comparing that to, well, today we use an iPad. And I'm like, all right, well, what's the cost of an iPad? What's the cost of the outer box case that you need? Now you got to go buy a scanner. When they start to look at the ROI.
Yeah. How long is that iPad going to last in that environment?
Yeah. So, a lot of that kind of stuff is what happens. But, but the good thing is, like I said, there's, lots of WMSs to choose from. The way that the WMSs are interfacing now is typically either a web browser or an Android app. And, there's lots of solutions out there for Android. And then even on the printing side, you guys have made all your printing way easier than it ever has been before with all the advancement of Link OS and connectivity of those printers. And, now that the supplies are feeding right into that as well, you have customers, some of your guys' Link OS printers, or actually all of your Link OS printers are capable of, capturing what media and how much media is going through there. So, we can see, we're emerging to an area where someone eventually is going to be doing a, pay by label, right? Instead of buying a bunch of boxes of, a bunch of rolls of label and running them through the printer, right? It's going to almost kind of be like, if you have enough volume, kind of like the copy machine in the office, right? When you need more toner, it just shows up, right? It goes in there. So I think that's what really, is important to the customers. They get an understanding. The good news is it's cheaper than it's ever been before. With the options, it used to be, you had one device and you kind of had to fit that in there.
Right.
Now you have multiple devices. So, yesterday, another example, this group of users does a lot of scanning. They may use this device. This supervisor here doesn't do that much scanning. They can use a much lower cost device. And since the interface is the same, right, in this case, it doesn't really matter, right? It's like buying, a really fast PC and then an okay speed PC, right? If I could use a better example than that, if I could think of one, but basically that's kind of what you're doing. And with your guys' products line, you can do that.
And you said that this is a 3-shift, 24-hour day operation. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have to buy 3 devices for each one of those shifts. Maybe they just buy the one device and extra batteries, and that device could be used basically 24 hours a day.
Yep, exactly. So I wish I only have one client in our whole client portfolio that says every person's getting their own device, and I was like, wow, that's like sales guy's dream, right? When that happens,
right.
But yeah, they're going to be able to use one device basically 3 shifts by changing batteries. They did talk about spares. How many spares do we need? I was like,
right.
You don't really need that many spares. And when it comes to your guys' printers now, this client's site is not in what I would call a major metropolitan area. Right. So, if a printer breaks, the cost of sending a technician on site to fix that is pretty expensive. So, people either take a gamble or, they pay the expense. Now you guys have an advanced, replacement, advanced exchange on your printers, where basically I was like, if you're going to order 25 printers and one breaks, right, Zebra's going to send you a new one the next day. Right. And you're going to put that one in its place and put the broken one in the box and send it back to Zebra to get fixed. And then, that's your printer going forward. So, I think the whole process is just getting streamlined. And, it's for really, really large companies, Fortune 500 companies, lots of IT, right? Those guys can manage this stuff pretty easily, right? It just kind of goes through. It's where this really benefits a lot of people is where you don't have a lot of IT resources on site. And you're, relatively, you're running pretty lean, which, more and more people are starting to do. You guys have made a tremendous amount of effort, to just make that customer experience better.
All right. So Mike, that's a lot of great information. And I think I want to wrap this up, but for a summary, I think what I'm hearing is that, for this inventory management solution, there's no easy answer. Every client is different. Every client's got different elements that they need to include and things that they need to think about. And really the things that I heard was you got to have a vision of what you want your system to look like and what's really necessary versus not necessary. You need to know your system capabilities. You need to know your technical capabilities, whether they're on-site or remote, or what kind of training needs to be involved there, because I think that's probably that outside of the budget is probably one of the most important things, right? You need to understand your budget, right? Yep. Not only initial budget, but your continuing budget associated with operating expenses with that system, and then you need to understand your support going post live. Because that's key too, and that's why you got great partners like yourself that can help with that. But you also have to think about your software and the support there and stuff like that. So
absolutely.
Well, I think this was a great conversation, Mike, and I hope our listeners again get a lot of useful information about it. I want to go back to Superstorm Sandy. Why I'm all bundled up. There's a rule in my house. We don't put the heat on until November 1st. That's the rule. And this, I got a little quandary here because it's been snowing a little bit today. It's supposed to go below freezing, and tomorrow's Halloween. And again, it's just like after Superstorm Sandy 8 years ago, we had a little snowstorm. The kids were trick-or-treating in snowy leaves. So I might have to break down and put the heat on tonight. We'll see.
Yeah, well, my heat's on because I was getting cold this morning, and I was like, hey, myself and my dog are freezing, so we're putting on the heat. But no, I hear you. I hope you have a good weekend. I thank everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you found that information helpful. I think, Anthony, our next podcast, we're going to talk about RFID, and we're going to have a guest speaker on that as well. So
that's right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So we're going to sign off. But hey, everyone, have a great weekend. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, and stay warm. Yeah, I'll see you. Have a good weekend,
right.
Mike.
Bye-bye.
Bye.